How's your PAX so far? Excellent, excellent. So my name is Stephen Toulouse, otherwise known by my online nickname, Stepto. How many of you have seen or were at or have heard of the Q&A that I did with Robert Koo at PAX East? So a few? Okay, good. We're going to do that again tomorrow at 10:30 in the main stage with Robert. But one of the things I really wanted to do was try that exact same conversational format in a different scenario with two people that I've known for a little while and are pretty awesome. You may have heard of them. I'm going to guess it's why you're here. It's not me. It's probably them. Let me tell you a little bit about how we're going to do things tonight. This is going to be a quick moderated conversation, probably about 35 minutes or so, and then we're actually going to open up questions to you guys, because the topic tonight is video game writing, which I am hugely fascinated by because it's a very unique style of writing. And tonight we have with us two individuals that I think are going to be able to tell us a little bit of their unique perspective on that. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Chet and Erik from Valve Software. So how are you guys?
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, you know, in general. These guys already answered that question.
Found a big bin full of candy back there.
Oh, that's the best, right?
And a coaster.
You should have brought the whole, you didn't bring the whole bag back.
Steal stuff.
And I just had it in my hand.
That's how you do it. So, man, what a long, strange trip it's been, right? I mean, we've peripherally known each other for 10 years or so, I guess, since everyone understands, right, that Chet and Erik ran a site called Old Man Murray. Are there some fans? And probably you're most familiar with the start to crate statistic for video games. So some applause there. So tell me, so let's start there, because I mean that's sort of you guys have the classic tale, right? You have the classic from the outside and became, you lived long enough as the hero to become the villain.
Sure. So like the start of Old Man
Yeah,
Murray?
sure, just in general, so Old Man Murray, just what made you decide that you wanted to write about video games? Was that a write about video games?
Purely monetary.
Yeah, we were super poor.
We owned a data processing company called Murray & Sons, and we named it that way because we thought we wanted to show that we had been around for a while with longevity.
So a family.
Sons.
Yeah, because everything was like, Data Pro Master.
Yeah, or initials that you couldn't understand. So we thought, okay, it'll be a
Make it
family
sound like-
name.
Yeah, like a plumbing company or something like that.
Did you envision that maybe you'd have an established in and then a fake year?
Well, just kind of in our head, I thought the dad from My Three Sons was Murray, but it was Mick Murray. So we kind of missed it, because I'm not smart.
Chet and I have a long history of getting involved in things that were way over our head, like installing satellite dishes and not knowing how to do that. And so there's always a point where we have to bail, or we have to explain why nothing works the way that it was supposed to. And so we always thought, like Murray & Sons would be like, oh, we got to go talk to.
You got to talk to the dad.
Talk to the old man.
Talk to the old man.
The old man was the pricing guy, because there's nothing worse when you're a freelancer or own your own business to have to talk money.
Yeah.
And so we would just always be like the old man, and then eventually they started thinking there was an old man for real, and we're like, okay, we're comfortable with that.
Well, that was your goal, I guess, in some form or fashion. Right?
I never believe anyone's going to believe our lies, so it's awesome when it happens. Yeah. But so we had that, and we did a lot of database stuff, and the internet was starting out, and we had figured out how to do database work in the internet. And in the back of one magazine, there was a place to buy wholesale copies of Myth for $30. That sounded pretty awesome. I'm like, we could sell that on the internet.
Right, you could turn it around.
And they're like, and we'll give you a spreadsheet of all of our games. And I'm like, oh, I have a database. We can put that in. We can publish that on the internet. We can sell games.
Let me check with the old man.
And literally, that's how it started. Is we did Myth, and then it was we started trying to list the games, like give descriptions of them, right? You look at every website. The weird thing is, like, it's different now. But back then, every website was just glowingly positive about every game.
Right.
And
I'm not sure it's that different, but.
And we started writing descriptions, and we got as far as Ultima Online, and just couldn't do it.
What was the breaking point with that particular game?
I don't know.
Actually, nothing wrong with Ultima Online.
It was kind of fun to cheese people and troll, but I don't know. We wrote a negative review.
Okay.
And people wrote in that we couldn't do that. Legally, we were not allowed to sell something we were being negative about.
Who? The general internet wrote
Well,
you?
remember, back in the day, there was not forums. There was Usenet, right?
Okay.
And that's where people posted and got into crazy arguments. And they decided that what we were doing was illegal for some reason, that they were going to let Richard Garriott know, and we would be closed down.
Wow. Because he's so litigious.
Yes. And so we survived that.
Well, obviously, yes. And so that was the beginning of what later became...
Yeah, really, it was like we started doing the short reviews and just started riffing on... We wouldn't play these games. They were horrible.
I mean, it was just free associating to... we didn't play Berenstein Bears Take a Bath.
Really?
Yeah.
No Barbie Horse Adventures? Nothing like that. Okay, well, interesting.
Whoop, there we go.
All right.
But it went from there. It went from there into a much more formal website. In terms of taking apart, let's call them tropes.
Yes.
Formal's probably a really weird word to use. You're right. I mean, just a more concerted effort to deconstruct.
Yeah, or just that might even be overstating. I mean, it was just we were going to tell some jokes, and we quickly stopped selling the games because that was a huge
pain in the ass. It was like we were just successful enough that every Friday we would have to go to the post office with a bunch of boxes of games, and it's like, this sucks.
Right. It was just not worth it. But working on the website was fun. So we kept doing that, and we wrote a little tracker so that we could see where the IPs visiting it were from. And there'd be 5 at first, and then 10, and all of a sudden we started seeing some IPs that we could track back to game companies. id, I think, was the first one, and it was, we went crazy.
The program would actually play little sounds when certain people came, because we were all excited.
So wait, what sounds?
I don't even remember. I think probably sounds from Doom. We just stole them.
Something like that.
Okay.
But yeah, it was exciting. We were still doing our normal work, but we were writing.
And we're talking like 50 people for a day.
Yeah, now that was
right.
Like no one, right?
But
and then it would have been whatchamacallit, the 3D dinosaur game. Trespasser, yes.
Oh God. And that guy who was such a fan, do you remember that guy?
Yeah, one of their producers called us and left us a message, not too happy. What we had done was we took all the hype and then compared it to all the reviews.
Right.
Which they didn't quite live up to.
And then it just kept going, and then eventually then it stopped going and petered out. And
stopped updating. Yeah.
So where was the line where you stopped from writing the here are the tropes in video games, and here are the things that are just too common, and here are the things that everybody does, both in the review space and in the making of game space, and it turned into Chet and Erik want to write video games?
Oh, I think we've all, Chet and I have known each other, first of all, since, I don't know, we were 17 or something. Yeah. But, we've always been working on some game, just never smart or talented enough to actually finish anything. But there was never a time when we weren't trying to write a game.
Really? I remember Erik actually wrote for the Atari 5200?
No, the Atari 400. You look it
That's
up
right.
online.
Wow.
When I was 16,
with the membrane keyboard.
Membrane keyboard.
Wow.
Something called Air Raid 2000, and it's
awesome.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Well, it's got 2000 in the title. Of course, it's awesome.
Yeah, it was unironically 2000 too. I was like, this seems like a pretty cool title for a game.
You were sold on your own title.
Yeah.
Excellent.
But they paid me. It was good.
Yeah, I think we were 18. We moved in together, and all we did was obsess about some bad racing game on the Atari.
Yeah,
we played forever.
That was another failed. It was like there's an episode of Taxi where Latka gets a apartment, doesn't realize that you have to pay more than the first month, and
every month. Oh God!
Just hiding out, hoping that guy didn't show up to kick.
Well, my uncle built a car lot, and we tried to write software to manage the car lot on my Commodore 64.
Yeah. Chet's family
did not do well.
Yeah, long line of con men and shysters. So
You're really laying the groundwork for the prospective writers out here. They're like, wow, I can go far. Yeah. I am so much better off right now than those guys.
My uncle is awesome, though. He owned a used car lot, a trucking company. They were going to put him in jail at one point. And he got like in the front page of the newspaper, but he was too sick. So they didn't put him in jail. So he
wow,
dodged
that's
that.
Yeah, also, long line of people avoiding going to prison, even though I should have.
So, I guess for the formal, the question that's foremost in my mind, and it may also be foremost in some of the audience's mind, I think, and this is kind of for Chet, is really, why is Coldstream so goddamn hard?
What? Why are you so bad? Seriously? Really?
No, really, it's tough, man.
Are you playing on like expert?
No, normal, with 4 people who've played.
Where are you
before.
dying? The tank in the final map?
Yes, for the most part. So that's a tactics thing?
So here's the deal. We made it so that when you go down that first gully, all the zombies come from the front or the back. They never come from the sides.
I see.
So now that you know that...
You're saying I've been non-observant.
Well, if you stop and you sit there and thinking they're coming, because all the other maps, they come from all the sides, and that one we purposely wanted to have this route thing, to give it to you so that you can control it, move ahead, and you get to the top of the gully.
Now it's game strategy. Now we're into game strategy. Right. But the question that is kind of tied to that is one of the things that I like about Left 4 Dead is the opportunity to explore your surroundings in moments of pause and have story be revealed to you in extremely subtle ways. So when you guys are thinking about writing a story like that, when you're thinking about that balance between intensity and that moment of pause that creates tension, how do you go about, what's your process for going about identifying those opportunities to insert narrative? Because I think at the end of the day, that's sort of the challenge and the essence of game writing versus other things. You have other events to worry about.
Well, Left 4 Dead's a weird one because we don't control the action. So we don't know where you're going to pause. So what we actually do is we litter the level with opportunities, and a lot of them will only be like 10 or 20%. So you can play the map a whole bunch of times, and what'll happen is you'll have to be standing next to this character, not be in combat, and then you have a 10% chance that it's going to fire. And so it happens really infrequently. And that makes it spread out so that wherever you have those down points, we try to have it spread through the map, right? Where Portal, you more or less know where people are going to have their down moments, where they're going to have their pauses, and we can fill in there.
And we tried a bunch. I mean, that was clearly the goal from the writing perspective of Left 4 Dead, was that we knew it was being designed to be played over and over again, so we kind of wanted to give you the sense that you'd hear something new, as you kept playing it. And we thought, because we always overwrite and things are too long and wish we had more time to just talk and talk and talk. And, we even had, I remember talking to Booth, there was this whole back and forth about could we pause the director, because because of the director, you don't know, could we pause it so we could just finish a line for an extra 5 seconds. But the problem was, at some point, players would start gaming that because they know nothing could happen during this line, and so we pulled that back out.
So all the conversations, all of them can be interrupted at any time. And a lot of the conversations have different random possibilities of choices, right? And I remember started working on Portal 2, and I wrote like a 3-line bit. I'm like, that's the longest I've written in the past 3 or 4 years.
Wow.
Because you always have to, you never know the future, so you can never talk about the future, you only know the moment.
The quiet time was in the safe room. Even though you can leave the safe room at any time, we write whole little opuses that happen in the safe room.
So if you sit there, they'll play, but if you leave, they just go away.
Yeah, like in Left 4 Dead, Keith's stories go on for a long time in Left 4 Dead 2. But you can interrupt them. There's always a line that's like, Keith, shut up, when somebody opens the door.
So tell me a little bit about the writing process that you guys go through. I want to talk a little bit in a moment about sort of the challenges that you face, but just what is, if everything goes well, what's the general process that you guys proceed through in terms of writing your games? There may not be a process I'm sensing.
No, there is. Obviously Left 4 Dead's different than Portal.
Sure.
But it starts with some basic game design. Chet and I saw Left 4 Dead in some early form, and we saw Portal in an early form. And you just start looking at what the game is and then trying to figure out, well, what can we add, if anything?
So it starts then, I guess, with play dynamic, right?
Yeah, with the game. We're not coming to them with a story and saying, hey, can you think up a game to go with this great story? I just thought
we have this awesome story. If only we had decent game.
If only we had a game to put around it.
It starts with the game, and then we try and fit the writing into the game. And then it's just a back and forth. Well, again, Chet and I's database and kind of programming background lets us contribute a little bit more to that. We use the data. We have a database set up for all the dialogue. Like Left 4 Dead, I can't even imagine how we would have done it if most of it hadn't been automated in terms of keeping track of the line. I don't know how many lines.
Yeah, I mean, we actually write all of it into a database, create the scripts out of that. When we're doing the hooking up, we have little scripts we wrote that make the text, essentially it's just writing into a text file what sounds to play and stuff.
Yeah, and then we do, at some point, we talk about it. We do a lot of writing with Jay Pinkerton, who co-writer on Portal 2. So the three of us will sit in a room and just throw out ideas or write scenes together. We tend to group write, kind of like a TV writing room. And somebody might come in with some stuff already written, or we might split it up and then be like, go, just flesh this out somewhere. And then we hook it up and we kind of see if it works. In little increments. One
of the big things, and that's why I never understand when they hire an outside writer to write a script and kind of throw it over to them, is we want to play the game in the earliest form we can, as much as we can.
Really?
Because you'll get the pacing down right away. And a lot of that is, in Left 4 Dead, is you're playing as that character and thinking in your head, and when something comes up, you take a little note. For me, Evernote is by far the most valuable resource I have, because it's just filled with notes for any game I'm working on or any game I think I might be working on in the future, of either I'm playing a part of it or whatever and thinking of characters. It's just a collection of notes that we eventually assemble into a script.
Yeah, and it's a daily process of sitting with the people working on the levels or the animators, just sitting with everybody, and at least half the day is spent talking to people and figuring out kind of what the state of the game is, what are you thinking, and we try something and it doesn't work, and so we all get back together and retool, or they're going to rip a piece out of the game, and so we need to rethink that. But yeah, Jay, the other writer, was working, I probably shouldn't say what he was working on. Anyway, he was working on a game that didn't come out before he came here, and when he got to Valve, he was amazed because he'd been writing on this game for a year and a half and hadn't played it once.
See, I don't think that's probably a common thought, is that it's more of a serial process than a parallel process, right? That somebody writes a story and then or someone writes a game and the story is maybe tacked on into it. But it sounds like to me it's an extremely parallel process.
Yeah, it's super parallel. I mean, maybe some of that comes from Chet and I just for our entire lives trying to make games, so we were pretty comfortable with the idea, just games in general and working on games. But I honestly can't imagine how a game gets written that way.
And you can't play
impossible.
Well, and also just not written. So once it's written and it's going to be in the game, we do either temp recording or we do real recording, we actually hook it up. Because often a joke is a millisecond of timing is just not going to be funny, or these exact conditions have to be met, or it's not going to be funny. And no offense to other people in the project, but sometimes people don't have that same sense of what's going to be funny or not.
Right, it's not their priority.
Yeah, I can't do the thing they can do, so it's fine. Yeah.
So you have a double challenge, right? Because you guys, I mean, your style and the stories you're telling aren't just narratives. You're striking for a particular tone. You're striking for humor, which is hard enough to do by itself. But do you feel that doing that from, I mean, I think it's pretty safe to say that the satire and the humor on the Old Man Murray site, as an example, was fairly pointed and probably difficult enough to do. But then now you got to add in the fact that it's a dynamic environment, it's an interactive environment. Like you said, the milliseconds there aren't necessarily in your control. Do you find it more of a challenge to write humor in that scenario, or less of it, or it's a little easier?
I think it's actually easier because it gives us constraints. And constraints end up being like the most awesome thing in the world, because you can look at it and go, okay, this is the little problem I have to solve. It's really been localized for me, and that's cool, so I can go right to that. Where if you just have a blank slate and, hey, you're going to be a balloon and you're going to float around, write that. And it's like, ugh. So like,
right, yeah, right, because you can twist on that for days.
You have Left 4 Dead and you can see the process, you can see the characters, you've worked with the artists to make the characters, and you kind of have all these constraints of what you're writing in, and you can just go from there. And like Left 4 Dead's great because you've got all the environment you could talk to and everything else, right? And so you get a gag going with the character, and then they, like Nick, who's a little OCD, and then all of a sudden they have a swamp map. Well, that's easy, right? Because all of a sudden in your head you're thinking the gags for it.
Yeah.
So I'll go the other way and say it's harder. The prose writing is what it is. It comes out of extend your pineal gland and spray it on the paper, and that's basically what you read. There's like 5 layers of abstraction in the game between writing it, hooking it up. Acting is a constant source
There's
of
more
anxiety.
work.
Yeah. Well, it's also
and more chance
unknown.
to screw up. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you really, it's harder to see the finished product.
Yeah, I mean, I should say, so with really good actors, I'm going to say it's actually easier, and like a person like Eric Layden, who played Ellis, actually adds a bunch to it. He would ad-lib, he would just run with it, and other actors won't ad-lib, or you find out they can never say the word everybody, they can only say the word everyone. Don't ask. Like there's weird
now I want to ask.
Actors has. But so when you do is you learn what they're good at in the first couple sessions, and then you write to that and you run with that.
Well, that was actually going to be from a practical standpoint. When we're thinking about writing games and writing narratives being a completely unique experience, one thing it probably does share in similarity to other forms of entertainment like movies is the fact that once it's sort of on the page, it can have a whole nother life in two other realms: the actor doing the voice lines, animators doing the particular work that's done, whenever they're delivering the dialogue. So how much do you think that changes, just as a guess, from where you guys stop and let that process take hold?
Well, so that process, the animation, we can at least see that happening. The animation animation only is additive. And the actors, we direct the voice sessions as well. So
really?
A lot of that's on us.
So there's no separate person that takes your words and
No.
does that. That's all you.
If you write a word for that, you're sitting in that session.
Wow.
Yeah, you sit in the session. We cut the audio. I mean, we shepherd it through the whole process. We cut the audio. We get it in the game. We hook it up. The acting is the part where it can potentially go wrong because maybe you just don't have enough time to express it right, or the gag just doesn't work. Like, there's a bunch of stuff that works great when you write it down and just dies. No actor could pull it off.
When we also have the issue of we'll record characters over the course of a year, and every 3 or 4 months we go back to them. And certain characters have a harder time coming back to that. I mean, we purposely try to get the actor that's closest to what we want so we don't have to worry about it. But sometimes there's just a little bit of a problem of getting that actor in back into that same place, or what you thought they were doing the first session, they accidentally did, and they can't come back to that at all, and that you just wrote everything to that strength, and you're like, oh.
Now you're like,
there's just also a little bit if you're working with an actor you don't know, and you get a bunch of auditions in. I mean, you're going from a 20 seconds of acting, and who knows? I mean,
that's got to be difficult.
The game Jay was working on, they needed like a Mexican woman, and the audition killed, but when he got in there, she couldn't do any kind of Mexican. She wasn't Mexican. She couldn't do a Mexican accent. She didn't speak Spanish, but she had like phonetically worked
like
over
somehow
20 seconds. But meanwhile, he's in LA. It's too late to change course, so you just have to. So
it's like padding your audio resume or whatever, just faking it.
Yeah.
And oh wow.
And then we don't do this a lot. Usually we get auditions or we work with an actor we know, but like Stephen Merchant on Portal 2, we didn't audition him. If he decided to come in and...
You guys were excited about it.
Yeah, or if he showed up and was going to phone it in and, because he could build a new deck on his house or something, we were screwed. I mean, we were screwed. I mean, thankfully he didn't.
Yeah.
But, so there's so much that can go. The acting... People who go to the sessions, like you think you just sort of sit there, it looks really kind of sedate and easy, but it's the most grueling thing.
Yeah, especially depending on the actor. So like you, Dylan, who plays Nick in Left 4 Dead 2, TV actor on everything, actually played Left 4 Dead in his trailer, wanted to be in Left 4 Dead 2, asked to be in Left 4 Dead 2 when he found out we were casting, was really great because you could be like, you're in the safe room, he's like, oh, I get that. But equally, he was so no nonsense. He's like, yeah, come on, I got a place to be. Like, he was so good, and so we brought that to his character, but it was always like, and at one point, I thought he was just going to punch me. Because normally it's really insulting for an actor if you read the line the way they want that you want it's read, right? I mean, there's the famous one with what's his face, William Shatner going off on that. I mean, right? But you on the other hand would be like, yeah, just tell me how you want it. Tell me how you want it. And it was like, it was awesome working with him.
Ideally, you don't. It was fine with you, but the reason you don't want to do that is because you hope the actor is bringing.
Oh, but they still would. Yeah, in his case, he would still bring it because he didn't. He didn't.
It was just his. Yeah, it was just his way of doing it.
Hunt me down and kill me. He's a legitimate hard man.
So it sounds to me like your process is in some ways kind of unique. I mean, it doesn't sound like, for instance, the database to hold the dialogue, using Evernote, actually playing the game far before you're actually thinking about narrative. Do you guys use any industry standard tools for writing that a lot of other people use, like Fade In or in screenwriting software or anything like that?
Just like, I mean, we use the same database we used in the Old Man Murray days that nobody uses. It's this thing called FoxPro, just because.
Oh, I remember FoxPro. Oh my God.
If anybody's a FoxPro fan, Valve games could not have been made since the Orange Box without FoxPro. And it's not like the last version. It's
no, it's the last one I bought.
Like
we bought it. It's licensed.
1996. It's FoxPro 3.0, I think.
No, 6.0.
No. Oh yeah, it's 6.0.
Yeah.
Anyway, so everything's done in FoxPro. And actually, Psychonauts, I managed to convince them to do in
how was that sell?
Well, so one of our engineers actually came to us like, no, we're going to solve the problem. We're going to give you some better tool. And it's like, no, we can do whatever we want with this. Like, if we have a problem, we can just write around it.
Somewhere.
Anybody. I also don't have to learn anything new.
Yeah, right. Yes, that's the key thing. Somewhere on the live stream, some FoxPro engineer from '89 is going, yes.
Well, actually, no. It turned out there's a guy at Valve named Q whose wife's dad worked at FoxPro in Springfield, Ohio, and was super happy to find out that it's still being
made his
used.
day.
Yeah, still using it and this is probably the highest grossing product to ever use FoxPro in the history of FoxPro.
There are whole enterprises that couldn't match what you guys
enterprise-wide stuff.
Wow.
But so I think it's unique. I don't really know. I mean, Psychonauts worked in a similar way with Tim. It wasn't that different. We'd sit and do stuff, and we'd go into the recording sessions and hook it up. And obviously, Tim was involved in the process. But having said that, the one that Jay was working on did not work that way. So,
and talking to other people, everyone kind of does it differently. There's a different flow. So
yeah,
I think everyone's unique in being unique almost, right?
We're friends with Steve Jaros, who was the lead writer on Saints Row, and it sounds like it works similarly for them there. He's involved in the game itself.
I guess what's interesting to me as like when I move from writing prose to writing a screenplay, right? That's a big transition because in some ways it's easier, in some ways it's a lot harder. And I think about your guys' style, and I think about the way that you expose your narrative as opposed to telling the story. You really do let it be discovered, as opposed to other games. And that's my opinion. I'm just throwing that out there. But in terms of other games, for instance, what is currently being done with the Walking Dead game. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to play that. It's much more story punctuated by gameplay, as opposed to the other way around. So my question is along the lines of something that I find interesting when I think about stopping to write a video game is, do you feel that the player is, what's the right way to put this, sort of your friend or your competitor when you're thinking about narrative? Because you can't control the player, right? You can only guide them.
Yeah, more in Portal, I guess you think of it as an actor who is just not...
Can't be directed?
Yeah, an undirectable actor who's going to... not hit his marks. So
they're all Gary Busey.
Yeah,
is what they're saying.
Always, yeah, right. Yeah, we are always like trying to play it as if we are trying to just not play along with the game. Even though most players do tend to play along with it, but I'm sure there's parts in Portal 2 where if you run ahead, stuff will get cut off. But we try and minimize that, which unfortunately will sometimes leave gaps where it would actually be nice to fill those in, but we just can't assume that people are going to hang out and do what we want them to do, because they rarely will.
Well, because one of the cool things we do is we play test our games with actual real people. So if you want to see how something's playing or working, you can bring it, they can watch it, right? And you can bring people in, you can watch how they play, you can see what's happening. And after 10 people playing it, you get the perfect feeling, but you have a pretty good feeling, especially if things aren't working. You can't kid yourself anymore, right? It's not that they're dumb. It's you've made a mistake.
You can kid yourself for another
50 you can go for a while.
Yeah, you can push it.
Well, the reason I asked the question about cold stream is I typically find in a game, I've been gaming so long, it's all my life, that I typically tend to figure out when a game is repeatedly, punishing is probably not the right word, but when I'm not succeeding repeatedly in the game, it's trying to tell me something.
For Coldstream in particular, we would not have released that campaign at the release of the game. We would have made changes. As the community matures and people get used to it, and we have people who've played for 2,000 hours.
Yeah.
We want to give give them different experiences, and one of the experiences we could give them is a more difficult map. Even because most people, even if they're good at the game, will play it on normal, and they just want to have the experience of going through. And so this forces kind of a challenge on them.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I want that in games, right? I want that if there's a maturity that I've mastered something, or that you feel like I've mastered a dynamic, that you can do the change up like that. But how do you do that in such a way that, Coldstream obviously is probably more of an experiential DLC than furthering the narrative, right? As opposed to some of the others.
Correct. It's non-canon. It was an experiment of taking a community campaign and moving it over.
So when do you make those types of decisions? Like from a game perspective, you're really taking the side of, and this is not right or wrong, it's just you're taking the side of we're going to further the game experience as opposed to furthering the narrative. What goes in is there a discussion phase of that? Is there a decision point?
Yeah, we kind of talked about we want to do the experiment of how far out are community maps from being able to move to the 360, or how far out are they where you would say we'd be comfortable shipping them. And it ends up they're really far out from the 360 because none of them have dev kits, none of them can see memory constraints or any of those problems going on. Right. And so to minimize what we were going to do there, we purposely made a constraint of no new audio. And that wasn't because we didn't want to do something. It was more of let's remove problems because more audio means a memory constraint on the 360 and we run into problems there. So let's remove that and not worry about that. And let's just see how long it takes. And can we have a community member take that map from start to finish? And it ends up there's a whole bunch of perf work that had to happen at the end that we had to do. So it was really about that experience of taking that and going further. And actually the guy who made it, Matthew Lorday, is now working on Arcane, working on Dishonored. So that was cool.
Yeah, I love stories like that where someone puts some community created thing and then ends up.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Super inventive, super imaginative.
I wanted to ask. So you guys, one of the things I enjoy about Portal, I don't know if you guys get this a lot, but a lot of people that I talk to when we talk about Portal, they talk about how the story affected them, right? It's a very, it's what I like to call a first-person puzzler, right? But it actually has a really important story component, as opposed to, on the other side of that coin, Left 4 Dead, which seems more action-oriented in their story in it. Again, that gameplay punctuated by story or vice versa. So when you guys are thinking about, so I guess what I'm trying to say is in the casual game world, I feel like, there's probably some epic tale behind Angry Birds. There's some story there, or there's some statement that Farmville is trying to make about, the dangers of farm subsidies. Where do you say from the beginning of a project, when you're thinking about starting a project, where do you think to yourselves, you've spoken about the gameplay, but where do you say to yourselves, this gameplay lends itself to the experience of the game versus the experience of the narrative, or vice versa? Is that a consideration that you go into when you're actually playing the game for the first time?
I lost track of what you were saying, but I think it's similar to what we said. We're looking at the game and trying to figure out how can we keep jobs by contributing to this thing. Desperately flop sweating this thing.
It's fear.
Fear drives all of it.
Stage fright and performance anxiety.
Seriously, it is not the story is there to serve the game. And so in Portal, we knew that there was a specific problem that needed to be Portal 1, that needed to be solved, which was playtesters are playing this game and they're having a good time, but even at the 2 hours, or if you listen to people on the internet complain, the 15 seconds it takes to solve Portal 1.
Oh, good Lord.
They were bored. They weren't bored, it was just too sterile. It was too dry. There was nothing pulling them along. So great, there's a problem, and how can we solve it? Through writing. And we did, generally,
I think
results may vary, but it worked out fine.
Do you guys think Portal turned out all right? Yeah?
No, okay. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Steve.
Wow.
But going into Portal 2 then, you have a more established people seem to respond to the story of Portal, so let's expand it a little bit. And I think Chet and I probably both benefit from the fact that we have no patience for story in games and generally don't like it.
That's what I was going to say. It's not like we have this philosophical, deep thought about this. We right for the way we would want to play the game, and we don't want to sit there and listen to a bunch of story.
No, fair enough. That's sort of the root of the question is like, what, is that intentional? And
yeah, because we just
impatient.
Yeah, hate it. We hate it. I can't press the button enough to get through the cutscenes fast enough.
Except, I just want to point, Saints Row 3 kind of solved that because I am a giant fat man dressed in women's clothing in my cutscenes with the British accent.
Yeah, I will say that. That does rehabilitate. Same with Dead Rising.
It makes me laugh every time.
Yeah.
I am simple.
There are games where if the cutscenes are done well enough, I will watch them. But generally speaking, I don't want to deal with them.
So now, is that different versus a rendered cutscene that interrupts the action versus an in-engine cutscene where you could wander off if you wanted to?
Yeah.
The non-skippable cutscenes that are interactive fiction?
Well, no, I think we all know that that's evil.
There's this thing, I remember seeing the Jackass guys talking about them making the movies, and they had these gay panic jokes, like if the cameras are rolling, it's not gay. I feel like we get into this trap where it's, if I can still move my head, it's not a cutscene, but it totally is a cutscene. So we do not want people to have to sit through things. And we fail sometimes. We totally cannot think of any other way, but know that it's a failure on our part.
Yeah, it's a lot better if you're in a safe room and you stick around because you want to hear the end of the
that's
joke.
Your choice.
That's a way better than
But
you
can leave is the important thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think it's a cop-out. And we, again, I'm not saying other people.
Sure, no.
We do it as well. We cop out this way as well, where we're pretending it's interactive, but really, we put a TV in the room so you can throw it around so you have something to do while the cutscene plays, right? It's, and it happens, and I would like to never do that again.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
not a promise that we won't ever do that again.
Right, no, fair enough.
Erik Wolpaw lies.
Yeah.
So you're talking about, writing stuff for Portal and that there was, so much stuff. I just wondered if there was anything that you had written for that, particularly, that you wish you'd gotten in, but is there any moment in the narrative? It sounds like there's probably not because you were serving the gameplay, but was there anything about that you had to cut or not do?
In Portal 1
or Portal 2? Let's say Portal 1.
Portal 1, the only thing that makes me mad is, it makes me really mad, so here we go. It doesn't actually make me that mad.
He's radiating heat, actually.
There's just one line, I remember this sticking out, which was, it was something about there was a test chamber that was designed for testing military androids or something. And it bothered me because the sign on the door, the hazard sign, still had little people.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, there's nothing we could do. But then like 3 days before we shipped, I realized if we just changed that sign so it had a square head, all of a sudden everything would make sense.
Right.
But
right.
Yeah.
That was the big drop out of Portal.
I took that to
because I think I spotted that in several.
For some reason, it wasn't just like I don't know. There's 5 layers of Photoshop that Kim told me no, basically.
Right, you got told no. It happens to the best of us. Okay, we've reached the point where I think I want to throw this open to the audience. I had one last question. Any announcements to make? I mean, I hear 3 is a magic number.
Yeah. I don't know. Can you help me flip the desk so I can storm out? Super heavy.
So, actually, the final question would be, how sick are you of that question?
We're not. I mean, every time somebody says it,
just bounces
it means,
right off?
Yeah. No, it means people are interested.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that when you ask it, you know that I'm not here to announce something.
Right.
So if you do trick me into answering, I get fired.
And I don't want that.
It actually seems like a super aggressive thing.
I'm kind of a jerk.
Yeah, it was because either way, I mean.
Well, look at it this way. I just asked it before 15 other people are going to come to a mic and ask it.
So you were doing it to be a nice guy.
Oh, yeah. That's nice.
I'm the hero of my own story. Okay, so I think, do we have some mics set up? What I'd like to do is if we have enforcers, where'd they go? I can't see. So if we line up in the aisles, either way. take a chest. Water. I see someone was at Chris and Scott's Scott and Chris show on Thursday night. All right, go ahead. That's his T-shirt.
Oh. Okay. How did you decide you needed a song at the end of the first game?
How did you decide that?
Well, two things. One, best game in the world, God Hand, had a song at the end. Which I just want to say is the greatest moment of my, well, I had a baby, so I'm just going to say that.
Yeah, you
best
can't.
moment.
You don't want to be in trouble after this.
Best
panel.
moment not involving having babies was I got to have dinner last night with Mikami from Platinum Games. And,
Oh, wow. Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, and oh man. Yeah, it was great. That's all I. Yeah.
He can't go further.
Yeah. So God Hand had a song, and it was amazing. And Kim brought in some tapes or MP3s of Jonathan Colton, and she had talked to him after a show, and it just seemed like a natural fit because we thought instead of just completely stealing from God Hand and making a song about the game, we would make a song where a character in the game actually talks about, how they felt about the whole experience.
Wow.
But the awesome thing that Eric thought something about is, so he comes up with the idea, and they want to do it. And so actually, I end up being in this meeting when I shouldn't have been.
Yeah, probably not.
And Eric's first thing is like, let's try this. If it doesn't work, you can fire me.
Yeah. Although, having said that, it's not as big a bomb as you think, because that's like a once every 3 days sort of thing. Yeah. In fact, I think I mentioned getting fired like 5 minutes.
Wait a minute, why were you so upset when I
asked you?
you?
Pretty constant theme of my time at Valve.
He's pitching it to Gabe Newell and Eric Johnson, I think, and Scott Lynch, and they all can't stop laughing. And they're just like, yeah, do it. It's the amount of money we're talking here is in money breaking, but Eric won't stop about, no, seriously, just you can fire me if it's bad. It's just, it's bad. It's going to be okay.
But it was nice. I mean, in retrospect, it sounds like it makes a lot of sense, but at the time, it didn't necessarily make a lot of sense. And Valve's credit, they were just like, yeah, it sounds great. Just promise us that you will pull the plug if it seems like it's not working.
It's such a special moment in the game. Everyone I know who's played it all the way through remembers that moment when the song started, and it's probably the first time a lot of people have ever watched all the credits of a game when an achievement was not on the line or something like that.
Yeah, we were super happy with how that turned out.
Thank you for your question.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, hello. So in the commentary for the first Portal, they mentioned that you had planned to use a text-to-voice program in place of an actual actor at first. When you did go to an actress, did that change your writing much? And on working with actors, what was your experience with Ellen McLean for the most part?
Piece parts, yeah. We were using a text-to-speech program, and I liked that, and it was easy to use, and it got laughs. We didn't have the ending of the game plan, so it wouldn't have worked at the point where GLaDOS becomes more human. We did need an actress for that, and actually the reason we picked Ellen, she's a great actress, but our initial consideration was that we knew she was an actress we'd worked with before who wouldn't be offended when we asked her to just mimic. We were going to give her the text-to-speech and just say, just do this exactly. And the initial reason for that, too, was that, I don't know if you ever researched text-to-speech programs, the licensing agreements are insane. Like, you need to pay them $1 per... there's just no decent text-to-speech licensing
And she
program.
actually did the announcer voice in Half-Life,
Yeah,
too.
that's how we knew...
Yeah,
and then, everything just came together because she is a great actress, and she's also a trained operatic soprano, so she could sing the song as well at the end. It was great.
Thanks.
So, at what point of the story development process do you stop laughing at your own jokes? Like, at what point do they stop becoming funny?
Early on, because there's a lot of pressure.
It has to last in the room.
It's got to be funny in the room, which isn't. That also doesn't mean it's going to be funny to anybody else or the next day or.
Yeah.
But it stops being funny for everyone pretty quickly, which is which is actually one of the bad things about doing a comedy game is that it's not funny.
By the time we were playtesting Portal 2, and everyone in the company playtests as well, I would only play foreign language versions.
No, that's same with me. I don't want to hear it anymore because it seems genuinely unfunny. Like it's just it's a nightmare. I don't even like to talk about it.
I mean, especially once it's down and you're that close to shipping, you can't change it, and if you play it with the English version, all you're going to do is think of all the little things you could have done that would have made that joke funnier.
So there's no jokes that you still find funny that you remember?
If you go back, I mean, now if I go back, I can listen to pieces of it, and some of it seems kind of funny. It takes a while, though.
In Left 4 Dead, sometimes someone just spurts out something just at that moment that I forget, right? And it just makes me laugh, so.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Hey, first of all, part of me hates myself for wanting to say this, but I think the scene where the companion cube gets spit out at the end of Portal 2 was such the perfect conclusion. I really don't think that can be topped. I mean, take that as a challenge if you will, but my vote would be no 3.
So just an admission here, that it was actually Josh Wire, the project lead, who came up with that, and he was nervous about even suggesting it because we were so against the cake and the companion cube and everything. As soon as he said it, to my credit, I guess, I was like, ooh, that is pretty good.
You can keep
we
your
were
job.
going to have, we had this whole other subplot where Chell gets married to a turret, and
Why didn't I ask about subplots?
yeah.
Oh.
In fact, the turret still exists. It's called the model's actually called the turret wife because of that. It got that far. It's the big fat turret that sings. You were going to meet this pile of turrets down in the bowels, and you were going to do something for him, and there was going to be a turret king who, just like in the those stories about people land on a cargo cult sort of island, they were going to marry you off to this turret, and we were going to do. There was that thing that was going around in that Sherlock Holmes game where Watson would just appear behind you sometimes, and we were going to do that through the rest of the game where the turret couldn't move and it would just disappear for a long time, but occasionally you turn around and it would be just standing there. We probably should have shipped that, but. So it was still sort of there at the end. That idea was still kind of floating around when we were making that end part. And so the turret wife was actually going to be the thing that followed you out. So you were out, with your new wife. But yeah.
Alternate ending.
So anyway, you have Josh Wire to thank for thinking it up, but technically me to thank for.
Not voting it down.
Yeah, not killing it, not making Josh's life miserable about it.
All right. I have an actual question to ask to follow up. I didn't expect that to come out of that. But now I've got this thing in my head of robots thanking you for assuming other various positions. So, yeah, I know.
That escalated quickly.
Yeah. I thought it would be funny. So the question is, it's again about the companion cube, and I imagine that ending, the Portal 2, was very much about kind of the community's reaction to the companion cube. It became this huge meme. It was really popular because of that. As an interactive storyteller myself, I'm really interested in kind of how emotions are expected from players, and it seems that like in any other situation that it was kind of like one of those tearjerker moments where like you're supposed to like you're telling the player you should feel significant loss when the companion cube is killed. I wouldn't have felt that if GLaDOS hadn't told me to feel that way. And I feel like in any other situation, not in this situation, in any other situation that would have been kind of a cheap shot, but it worked really well here. Does that mean anything to you?
I'm glad that you had that experience. That was kind of the plan. I mean, I guess we were surprised that people would take it as seriously, I guess, as they took it. We knew it was a cruel trick. But what I didn't actually think was that people would actually, we thought people would be viewing it, and I think a lot of people did, from sort of a distance, of I understand this is a cruel trick, but I'm not necessarily invested in it. But a lot more people than I thought got actually invested in that moment. Not through a genius insight on my part.
But yeah, if it would have been written purposely to try to elicit some kind of meme kind of about it, it wouldn't have worked.
Oh,
right?
yeah, take the meme part away, just the actual emotional reaction. I mean, it's a lot of a crap. I don't want to give away secrets. It's a big crapshoot mostly. Hopefully things work. We do our best.
Write a lot, hope for the best.
Yeah.
Hi. I myself write novels, and so I was wondering what you guys think the difference is between writing a novel and writing a video game.
We've never written a novel. That's one difference.
We can imagine. You have a lot more words.
I think
I write novels and I don't use a database to automatically script things.
It seems like there's a bunch of, I think one of the things I said about like writing prose, writing Old Man Murray probably holds true, is there's a much more direct connection to your audience, a lot less layers of abstraction between you and the final product, so that's nice. Writing comedic novels is a tough thing. There are very few that have succeeded, Confederacy at Dunce's, and maybe there's a handful of other ones, but I don't know, for whatever reason, comedy doesn't seem to work in the novel form. I'm trying to even think.
Mark Lehner's.
Christopher Moore. Yeah, there's some.
Yeah,
but it's not like your New York Times top 5 books or comedy books. Right?
It just doesn't seem to hang.
A lot of I think what works is we get the benefit of there's an artist who created something, there's an animator animating it. I remember early on with Left 4 Dead, we were running into this problem where feedback was like, the biker should say he's a biker every time. Well, not really, because he's dressed as a biker, he looks like a biker, and he's acting like a biker.
Yeah, you get to cheat. Yeah, that's another big. You get to offload a lot of your problems on other people, which is. Having said that, as much as we like collaborating, I'm not gonna lie. Occasionally, it's nice to just do something that's yours and yours alone. Do you want me to inspire you to write a novel, or try and talk you out of it?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi there. I don't have much of a voice right now. One of the things I love about Valve games is they're so good at managing subtlety and exposition. So parts in Portal where you're able to find like the Ratman dens that tell like a whole separate side story that's kind of pushed on the player to find, and it's so subtle that you wouldn't really know it unless you were kind of looking for it. And in Half-Life and pretty much all of your franchises, there are things like in Half-Life, there's a shipping container with a chair on top, scattered around with beer cans, and a shotgun next to it. That kind of tells a story in and of itself without directly saying that. So how do you manage to balance exposition and subtlety like that?
I mean, it's a lot of just working with the level designers come up with a lot of that themselves. So a level designer will do gameplay, and then also we have artist level designers, and that's often the two work together to tell a story for something. So they don't want to just create, like, here's a farmhouse out here. So like in Small Town in Left 4 Dead, there's a truck pulled up, they had guns in the back, like there's a whole little story that they want to tell there. And just everyone kind of weighing in that way and not saying, hey, I am the story king, I am going to press this down throughout, and letting everybody express themselves. You end up being able to do it in a lot better in different ways.
Yeah, I mean, if you work on something for 3 years, you end up doing some of that stuff also to just entertain yourself. You want to make the piece you're responsible for as rich as possible. And I think both of us like the kind of comedy, at least, where there's something crammed into every corner. Like there's always something to look at, and games are just great for that because you can, there's a lot of space to explore. But yes.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, I have 2 questions. First, how valued do you think writers are in the video game industry, since a lot of games that are coming out now tend to either have very minimal or not very good story to them? And what sort of things should you study if you want to get into writing for video games?
I think I hope they continue to be valuable. I think they are. I mean, there's certainly a type of game that doesn't necessarily require a writer, and that has a rich story experience, like experiential games, like, most recently DayZ. Like, all the player stories coming out. It's legitimately frightening to me because I'd be out of a job pretty soon. But I would say if you want to write for games, the advice I give is learn to code. Like, you will be more valuable to your team. You'll be able to. There's no downside.
And
to
you
it.
don't have to be able to program C++.
No.
There's a logical thinking and being able to look at scripts that kind of
Just
help.
be able to think like a programmer and write a little bit of code. The other thing is get some experience working with actors, because it's a skill that you don't think about that much. And there's actually a lot of opportunities to do that. I mean, you can work in local theater. Chet's actually got a theater degree. Yeah, one of the more useless degrees. Yeah.
It's kind of using it.
But those two things: learn to code first. Learn to and try
and write.
Well,
write a lot.
Yeah, but
write a
the
lot.
writing is. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing I can tell you about that. Just write, But
But don't be scared to write something and have it out there. There's mod teams. There's a lot of different venues that you could release your work. Release your work, get feedback on it. Don't cry if it sucks at first, because it's probably going to suck. No offense. That's how it works, right? You don't let that brush you off. Decide what feedback you want to take, work it in, and keep releasing. It always gets better.
Thank you very much.
So I think we're running low on time. I think we have time for 2 very quick questions, if you guys could be real super quick, super brief.
All right, I have a question about Old Man Murray. I know it was a long time ago. I hope that's okay. You had a game called Crate Master.
Yes.
And there was a high score / Photoshop contest about that. I'm the person who won that contest, and I never did get my prize.
Oh, man.
What was the prize?
I don't know. What was the prize?
What was the prize?
It was a copy of a game called Treadmarks that probably doesn't exist anymore. But
oh no,
we have a bunch. Make it tougher.
I saw some copies of
Give you a copy of Left 4 Dead, I guess. You come up afterwards, and Chet will take care of you.
Thanks.
And the funny thing is when I first pitched this to them and said I was going to open up with the Old Man Murray, no one's going to care about that website. It's 12 years old.
Okay, real quick. So how much are you ever stepping on the game designer's toes, or how much are you influencing the game design? For instance, like in Portal, you find the back rooms with the remnants of the other test chambers and whatnot, and that seems like a very narrative reveal. How much of that was your idea, and how much was did the level designers already have that put in there? Yeah, I don't remember exactly, and part of that is just because even on Portal 2 now, I don't remember a lot of it. It's such a collaborative process that the decisions that get made are just, it's a daily thing. So there's a back and forth. We'll write things that'll inspire the level designers or the animators to go off in some direction, and they will they'll do environmental stuff or gameplay stuff that sparks some idea for us.
Yeah, how our situation works is we work in cabals, and cabals are mixed discipline. So you're sitting next to artists or animators or level designers, and everybody's just talking and riffing on stuff, and I'd be hard-pressed for a lot of the stuff to figure out who actually came up with the idea.
Cool, thank you.
Sure.
All right, so I'd very much like to thank you two for this wonderful
Thanks
conversation.
For coming.
That's fun.
Appreciate it.
So we'll let you guys go. Again, thank you for coming, and don't forget that we'll be doing a very similar setup with Robert Koo, the President of Business Operations for Penny Arcade, 10:30 in the main theater tomorrow morning.